inventory management system. Okay. Why do we need to manage inventory? What are the different techniques that are utilized by inventory management system? And we had looked into a small video. Now, with respect to the study of systems, this session, we will be looking into a system for onboarding of a new employee, okay, in a service organization, essentially a service organization. That's what we'll be looking into. So before we start with our example on service organization, we will be choosing an MBA institute as such, because all of you are aware of, yes, I believe you might have visited the institute, right? So that's where you get to see different faculty members working together in a team, okay, coordinated by the course coordinator and the dean, the director, and so on, or head of studies. So how or what should be the manner in which a new employee could be introduced in an organization? It has a major impact, okay, on the way the new employee, what you say, create the impression that is created in the minds of the new employee with respect to the organization. It's a way in which the employee views the family that he will be joining into for working purpose, right? So that's where, let us look into a small video, and then we move on to our example of onboarding into a service organization, that's with respect to an educational institution, right? I have given you two links. Let us watch. Just a moment. I'll leave the meeting, and then we will join back, because I think I haven't. Yes. Is it audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it audible?
No, ma'am.
Just a moment. Yes. Is it audible?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Just a moment. I'll stop sharing, and then I will add back. So yes, I didn't share the sound that time. Okay. Yes, it should be now.
New employee orientation or onboarding is an important piece of HR and employee management. A formal orientation is essential to setting a new hire up for success. It's also a continuation of the corporate image and values you portrayed during the interview process. Think of it as your second chance to make a great impression for your company or organization. Employee orientation can also be designed for current staffers who are being promoted to a new position within the company and need a similar type of program.
Ma'am, clinic officer.
No matter what size your company is, a formal orientation is the best way to welcome new employees and introduce them to your organization. Orientation can range from a few hours to several days, depending on the amount of information to cover and the complexity of the position. Ideally, orientation should take place as soon as possible after the employee's start date. This will create a positive first impression that's consistent with the image you conveyed during the hiring process. It will also help the employee get familiar with your organization and will open a dialogue for any questions that the individual may have. Along with the initial welcome from the hiring manager and staff, your employee orientation should typically include 5 key components: new hire paperwork, company policies, compensation and benefits, the employee handbook, and training. First, let's discuss paperwork. Orientation is the best time.
Yes,
स्क्रीन दिसत नाहीये म्हणजे व्हिडिओ तो.
दिसत नाहीये. Okay, you are able to listen, but you are not able to view.
हा.
Okay. Thanks for informing. Okay, so I will. Okay. Let me share the screen thereby. Okay, is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay.
An important piece of HR and employee management. A formal orientation is essential to setting a new hire up for success. It's also a continuation of the corporate image and values you portrayed during the interview process. Think of it as your second chance to make a great impression for your company or organization. Employee orientation can also be designed for current staffers who are being promoted to a new position within the company and need a similar type of program.
So not only it is important for the new employee, that's what they are trying to say, but even if when a person gets promoted to the higher position, even that time employee orientation should be organized, right? Okay.
No matter what size your company is, a formal orientation is the best way to welcome new employees and introduce them to your organization. Orientation can range from a few hours to several days, depending on the amount of information to cover and the complexity of the position. Ideally, orientation should take place as soon as possible after the employee's start date. This will create a positive first impression that's consistent with the image you conveyed during the hiring process. It will also help the employee get familiar with your organization and will open a dialogue for any questions that the individual may have. Along with the initial welcome from the hiring manager and staff, your employee orientation should typically include 5 key components: new hire paperwork, company policies, compensation and benefits, the employee handbook, and training. First, let's discuss paperwork. Orientation is the best time to complete and collect certain paperwork, such as the federal Form I-9, which verifies eligibility for employment. Employees must complete Form I-9 no later than their first day of work for pay. Employees should also complete a Form W-4 for tax withholding and any required state income tax withholding forms. Remind new hires to bring appropriate documentation needed for these forms, such as driver's licenses, social security cards, permanent resident cards, and/or passports. Next, broadly review your company policies regarding attendance and leave, employee conduct, and safety and security. Cover expected hours of work as well as absenteeism, meal and break periods, and time off, including what types of notice you require. Be sure that the employee understands the rules regarding dress code, telephone and computer use, and other expectations. You should also explain necessary safety and security policies and procedures and distribute building keys, employee identification, and parking passes as appropriate. A thorough onboarding program also covers compensation and benefits in as much depth as time allows. Provide details on pay periods, direct deposit, payroll deductions, health insurance, and any other benefits to which your new employee may be entitled. Prepare a benefits packet ahead of time to give the employee and let him or her know who in your organization can answer benefits questions. Of course, a new employee will need time to review his or her options for things such as health insurance and retirement savings, so communicate enrollment deadlines as well. Next, provide your new hire with a copy of your employee handbook. To a great degree, many of the policies and benefits information you've discussed will be repeated in the handbook. However, your handbook is one of the most important internal documents because it lays out your expectations, your policies, and procedures in writing. Even if you've reviewed aspects of it, Explain to your employee that he or she is responsible for understanding all of the policies it contains. The handbook should also include a written acknowledgement to be signed by the employee verifying that he or she has received and read the handbook. When this document is returned, place it in the employee's personnel file. Finally, your onboarding process should include any necessary training to get the new hire up to speed. This may be informal, such as a time period of being shown the ropes by another employee, or more structured training is necessary, such as classes to master a specific computer program or customer service procedure. Don't be afraid to invest in training. Even if it removes your new employee from the workplace for a time, he or she will return prepared with the knowledge to do the job at hand. Thank you for taking the time to join us for HR Over Coffee today. To learn more about all aspects of human resources, benefits, and employee management, visit us online at hr360.com. We offer a vast library of forms and documents, including a sample employee handbook that can help guide you through hiring and new employee orientation.
Okay, so with this, let us go back. Yes, this was with respect to new employee. Now let us have a look into this one.
Look, man, I just want my sales back. Nobody's buying nothing these days. How do I find new clients?
Look.
Today, we're talking about building better onboarding. And not just okay onboarding, great onboarding. I'm your host, Ryan McCausland, and it's my job to help you understand and demystify human resources stuff facing small and medium-sized employers. And I know about this stuff because I happen to be an HR party of one. My employer, Bernie Portal, is bringing you this show based on our experience serving thousands of employers and their HR parties of one, or sometimes two or three, through our all-in-one HRIS, Bernie Portal. I've had a first row seat observing HR parties of one in action, and I've studied this deeply to tease out what works. Welcome to HR Party of One. A lot of organizations are focused on reducing turnover, but most employers don't appreciate the power of onboarding. The connection between onboarding and retention isn't always obvious. The data shows, however.
So the connection between onboarding and retention is quite obvious. That's what he is trying to say. So the impact that an organization will be having on the minds of the newcomers, right? So that's the reason having a very good onboarding for all the employees is a must, and for which you should be essentially having systems set in place. Okay. Yes.
That a new hire's first day is actually a make or break time for retention. I've been at our organization for over a decade, and I still remember my first day. I had just finished an MBA program, and I showed up in a suit and my favorite blue and yellow striped tie. Everyone else was wearing jeans. The point is everyone remembers their first day or week at a new job, and it's a powerful opportunity to impact the experience and perspective of everyone who joins your team. So it's important to build your onboarding processes with retention in mind. This reduces turnover, which is great, but the icing on the cake is that a stronger onboarding process alleviates administrative pressure on HR and hiring managers too. So what does onboarding for retention look like? There are a couple different ways to answer this question. For example, if everyone in your office wears jeans, consider telling a new hire to wear jeans instead of a suit and tie. But our position is that the absolute most important thing, the most important thing, is providing new hires with extremely clear expectations around their role and how they'll ramp up. Also, how long you expect that to take. As it turns out, clear specific expectations are one of the most important and least common elements of an effective onboarding checklist. A comprehensive roadmap of expectations over a predetermined period of time gives hiring managers and new hires a mutually agreed upon set of actions to take and milestones to hit for a successful ramp-up period. At our organization, we call this a 30-60-90. This is the list of expectations managers have for the new hire's first month, first 2 months, and first 3 months, or 30, 60, or 90 days. I'll go into a little more detail about how to build a successful 30-60-90 later, But before we dive into the practicalities of onboarding, we've got to cover one of the most common questions at HR Party of One, and one of my favorite segments. Whose job is it anyway? Hiring and onboarding are going to be co-owned by HR and hiring managers. There are some parts of the process that will more naturally fall to HR, like the I-9, the W-4, and other legal paperwork. But realistically, the hiring manager needs to play the biggest role in actually onboarding the new hire on their first day. Throughout this episode, we'll outline some more of these natural divisions of labor, starting with the 30-60-90. Because of the nature of the supervisor-direct report relationship, the hiring manager needs to be the one responsible for building the new hire's 30-60-90. They're the person who can answer what this person needs to accomplish and what skills they need to develop to be an effective member of the team. HR can't be responsible for making those calls. However, HR can definitely help with QA in this area. HR likely will need to take the reins on implementing a comprehensive and consistent onboarding process, including the development of a 30-60-90 or similar roadmap, or at least a template. In other words, HR will need to be responsible for creating the company-wide onboarding process and coaching managers on completing it effectively. Our organization actually provides our managers with a really thorough handbook on how we welcome a new team member. It starts before they even arrive. We ask managers to send an email with basic instructions on parking, dress code, how to get in the building, and other need-to-knows. Then the new hire welcome guide breaks down a new hire's first day down to the hour, sometimes the half hour, and focuses extensively on how managers should communicate our history, mission, and our culture guide, which is our version of a company handbook. We spend a lot of time developing the culture guide, and it extends beyond the basic info included in most handbooks. It also outlines how we tackle problems, what our team philosophies are, and more. In another episode, I'll dive more deeply into how to build a really great culture guide and how to use it to navigate your organization's future. But for now, I'll just say that our culture guide is broken down into 3 sections, particularly important to new hires: our history and mission, our workplace policies like vacation and lunch break rules, and finally, logistics including their tech tools, how to use a printer, getting a team photo, and more. Your onboarding process needs to cover all 3 of these categories as well, which is why a really comprehensive and consistent onboarding checklist is so important. If your organization doesn't have one of these, it's likely that every hiring manager has their own process, and inevitably, some will be better and more comprehensive than others. This isn't ideal. You want all team members to have a consistent entrance into your organization. We have a 32-item list that we call the joiner checklist, and here's what it looks like. If your organization doesn't have one of these, or if it's simply ordering a computer and signing them up for benefits, you're likely about 30 items short. Again, this isn't ideal. You want all team members to have a consistent entrance into your organization. Now let's talk about boss buy-in. This is an opportunity for HR to add real value by taking ownership of this process. And the first step is to go to the business owner, president, or CEO and make a case for structured and strategic onboarding and how it will improve the business. With her endorsement, you'll schedule meetings with hiring managers to learn what they're currently doing. You might find some really great ideas or some big bottlenecks that need to be fixed. An added benefit of auditing and developing an actual process is that it will make your job easier and more organized. It'll also provide a better representation of your value to the organization, making visible all this onboarding stuff that other members of your organization might just see going on in the background and maybe take for granted. But to be successful, don't position this as a benefit to you. It's a benefit to the organization and to new hires. Make the case for how a comprehensive and consistent onboarding process improves retention, saving the company money and time. Well, how can you make that case? Well, here are the onboarding mistakes that contribute toward turnover. These are the things that hinder a new hire's ability to ramp up and effectively integrate with your team and could have them looking for a new job before they even really get going. Generally speaking, you want to avoid new hire anxiety. Don't immediately throw your new hires in the deep end with assignments or work they're not ready for. Also, prepare in advance all the things they'll need or will have questions about but may be too anxious to ask. Things like coffee, where the bathroom is, things like that. You also don't want to wing a new hire's first day. One of the goals of our new hire welcome guide isn't just making the new hire's first day successful, but also making sure managers are making the most of that time too. It's a time commitment for the manager, but it produces better results. You also don't want to make the mistake of thinking that onboarding is a one-day affair. Onboarding extends at least through the new hire's first month, if not longer, and we think of onboarding stretching through the first 90 days, which is why something like a 30-60-90 is so important. Finally, one of the most important things that a strategic onboarding process includes is a mechanism for early feedback. Generally speaking, new hires are most receptive to feedback. They want to make a good impression, and they know there will be processes they're unfamiliar with. Don't be afraid to coach and offer feedback early. Otherwise, you set yourself up for a harder conversation down the road. When I hire a new person on my team, I tell them on the first day, I'm going to give you direct feedback in real time. If you're not used to that, it might feel awkward at first, but it's going to set you up for success. I want you to enjoy autonomy as quickly as possible, and my early feedback will help you get there. So that brings me back to the 30-60-90. Again, this is a list of expectations managers have for the new hire's first month, first 2 months, and first 3 months, or 30, 60, or 90 days. This is one of the best ways to ensure that direct reports know what the expectations are, and managers are prepared to give early and regular feedback on whether the new hire is meeting the tasks outlined on their 30-60-90. I'll briefly walk through what one of our 30-60-90s look like. This is what every new member of our advisor success team receives. The advisor success team supports the users of our software products, so think of this as a client success or customer service role. This is what ours looks like for a client success role. In 30 days, they'll know how to create client accounts. They will have sat in clearly defined number of sales calls. And we do that with our sales team because our sales team gives a full overview of our technology, which is helpful to new team members. They also complete one-on-one meetings, read software reviews, and listen in on welcome calls. They'll shadow existing team members 10 times and become comfortable with how we welcome new clients. They'll start building out the client software solutions with help, among other items. In 60 days, the training wheels come off, so to speak, and they realize full functionality without assistance. They still sit in on a number of meetings and watch various demos to further their knowledge. In 90 days, they're comfortable in their specific role tasks, which are still clearly defined, without regular assistance. Again, this isn't something hiring managers can expect HR to do on their own. They will need to develop what their 30-60-90s look like, but HR can assist in the process. So beyond the 30-60-90, what else do you need to think about when implementing a consistent onboarding strategy? Well, legal requirements. This includes hiring paperwork like offer letters, legal notices regarding harassment disclosures or non-compete clauses, and the collection of official documents like the I-9 and W-4. This is an area that may be better suited for HR to manage for consistency and for compliance purposes. Now, if you're wondering why do we have to do this in the first place, here's a little background. The I-9 comes from the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986, which created penalties for employers who hired immigrants ineligible to work in the U.S. To monitor compliance, the verification process was implemented. State laws on the I-9 vary, but generally speaking, employees must complete Section 1 by the first day of work and present the required identification and eligibility documents. Employers must review these documents and complete Section 2 within 72 hours after employment commences, even if the employee isn't scheduled to work for that period. The W-4 manages employer withholding of taxes, which was instituted to more efficiently fund World War II. This is the reason you can't just cut employees a check every 2 weeks. The W-4 also needs to be completed on the employee's first day.
Yes, now this I-19 and documents are all those that are required to be filled up by an employee in any of the organization, right? With respect, now this is with respect to the US laws, whereas in India, if you go, there are the other details like PF and others that an employee is asked to fill in, whether he is having an existing provident fund number. In case, if no, if yes, if he would like to continue, if no, then whether he would like to open one or continue with the same, right? Okay.
Your organization is almost certainly already covering these legal requirements. If not, start standardizing the process immediately. You're taking some serious compliance risks by leaving these items out. Now let's talk about technology. Determine how you'll equip new hires with the tech tools they'll need to perform their job duties. This includes both hardware, like company-issued laptops and cell phones, as well as software, like company email accounts and login credentials. Additional items like company cards, credit cards, and building access keys should also be included in the technology segment of the onboarding process. In many organizations, employees are introduced to these tools in a piecemeal fashion, over several days as the hiring manager remembers them. This greatly slows down the new hire's ability to ramp up to full productivity in their new role. The better approach is to establish a baseline of company-wide technology needs, like access keys and computers, that all new hires require, and then work with hiring managers to determine any additional needs. Once you have a comprehensive list, set aside a specific time during the onboarding process to introduce all required tech to the new hire. If you or your organization doesn't have an onboarding checklist, you can have mine. There's a link in the description below, and you're welcome to download and edit it to make sure it fits your organization. Also, if you want to go more in depth on this, Or if you just happen to love onboarding as much as I do, check out our online classes at university.bernieportal.com, including the art of onboarding. Now, let's talk about culture. The first two categories of items can often be completed before the new hire's first day in the pre-boarding process. However, there are some components of onboarding that can't begin until the new hire begins, including cultural acclimation. Some argue that culture is the only sustainable competitive advantage for any business. The first few days and weeks of a new job constitute a make or break period for retention. If reducing turnover is the end goal, your onboarding process must ensure new hires feel welcome, supported, and familiar with the culture. For this reason, you should start introducing cultural components as early as the new hire's very first day. By scripting this into your onboarding process, managers can more effectively communicate culture and mission to new hires. And this information will make the new hire feel like part of the team from the very beginning. This should be written down ahead of time. Again, this is the benefit of having a culture guide in place. Why? Here's one example. We hire a lot of entry-level candidates who recently graduated from college, and we send our culture guide to them before they even start on their first day.
Okay, so major points as far as the employee new boarding, different aspects have been considered in this video. So let us go back to our example of yes, onboarding of a new employee in a service organization with respect to an educational institute, right? So that's where it has been divided into different departments as to how the onboarding of a new faculty member will take place. So that's where there are 6 departments in all, right, which have been identified. Then first is the admin or HR department. Now directly I have come up with the standard operating procedures that are built up within an educational institute. So that's where initially the candidate should hand over the original copies of the educational certificates to the HR department, where he handovers all his credentials, where the HR department will then create a separate file for each of the candidate or the faculty member containing all the necessary details that are required, like offer letter, confirmation of the offer by the candidate, educational certificates, PAN card, Aadhaar card, iCard size photos, copies of publications that a faculty member has come up with, and so on. Then the policy of the organization with respect to, now that's what we have looked into, the attendance, right? The number of leaves, the punching details, how is the attendance going to get recorded in the organization, the concessions that a candidate will be getting in his regular duty hours, okay, with respect to either the late arrivals or the early departure, the permissions to be acquired from the concerned authorities, medical leaves, prefix and suffix requirements as far as the leaves are concerned, etc., are informed, and all the doubts of the employees with respect to the same are being clarified, right, by a main HR person. Then the manner in which the salary will be dispersed, okay, the timings, the amount of salary, the deductions from the salary with respect to profession tax, ESIC, provisions for deduction on account of different reasons like late marks, LWP, and casual leaves, etc. Then the thumb impression of an employee is being taken for punching the regular attendance. Then all the different employees within the department who take care of the records with respect to the employees, or to whom the employee needs to report with respect to that, or gets the employee will be needing a clarification. So who is the right person whom the employee can approach? So that's where he is being introduced to the entire HR department, and a complete list of personal contact numbers, intercom contact numbers. Nowadays it's WhatsApp, okay, that's where it's handed over for communication purpose, and the new employee will be added to the WhatsApp group as such. Yes, so this is with respect to the first department, that is admin or HR department. Next we have institute level interaction. Now with respect to institute level interaction, he will be asked. So that's where an institute may be having different departments like BBA, MBA, MCA, right? So when the first time institute level takes place, that's where the new employee is asked to give his introduction so that everybody is aware of the new joinee, from which specialization he has joined, his work experience, what are the contributions that he has made, okay, and what aspirations he has come up with to join the institute, and so on. Further, this new employee is welcomed by the head of the institute. It could be the head of studies, the director, or the dean, okay, in the manner in which the protocols are usually observed in any of the institute. Then the other members in the institute are allowed to get accustomed to the new employee. So that's where they are given some time to uh, have to breaking the barriers and to come out of their zones, to mix up, to gel up with each other, and to find out with respect to the work experience and whatever achievements the newcomer has come up with, right? And that's where the institute level expectations from the different departments may be, in case the person who is hired to take care or to give inputs to each and every department. So what are the expectation an institute will be having from such a newly joined faculty are being disclosed over here. So that's with respect to the institute level interaction after the HR department. Now let us come to the departmental level introduction, where the department at which the faculty is joining, okay, so that's where he gets introduced, right? The head of the department will introduce the person after the institutional introduction is being done. So wherein again the new employee will be asked to disclose or give a brief introduction with respect to everything that he has on his resume. Then if at all he got to know about the vacancy within the organization from an already existing faculty, then he will be discussing how the manner in which these two faculty members are related to each other, okay, where they might have got they might have be working in previous organization together, or maybe with respect to certain exam duties or certain conferences or workshops where they get to know each other, and so on. Then department level expectations. Now once the institute level expectations are taken care of, then what does the department uh, expect from such a new joinee to contribute not only towards the academics but also to the extra and the co-curricular activities that the institute takes care of or the department takes care of are being disclosed. And then contact of the new employee is added in the entire organization formal communication systems as well. So that's where he is being a new mail ID is being created, he's added to the WhatsApp group or any other information system that the organization will be having to pass on the required information to the different departments or the faculties. So that's where additions would be made essentially. Then we come to the fourth point, that is course coordinator interaction. Now, the manner in which now essentially a faculty, when he joins the organization, the main purpose is the academic part or the academic courses that the faculty will be handling, right? So there is a course coordinator who who takes care of the entire academics, okay. Now along with the co-curricular activities that are required to be handled along with the courses that will be handled by the faculty, they are being disclosed to him. Then the expectations with respect to the academic performance, right? It could be with respect to the manner in which the sessions are being delivered, or it could be with respect to the notes and the material that is shared with the students, the concurrent evaluation that is required to be expected to be completed from the students, being on the time, conducting the exams, the discipline that is observed, and the different reports that a faculty member is supposed to prepare and hand over to the course coordinator for the academic activities as well as the co-curricular activities. Now, the co-curricular activities could be with respect to the different projects that are being handled, the outbound activities, the workshops attended, or the certifications that the student might take care of with respect to the courses, right? That is planned by the institution. And finally, the reporting of the entire activities that are looked into or taken care of by the faculty member. Yes. So once the course coordination or the academic coordination is being done, so that's where comes the interaction with the knowledge hub of the organization, knowledge center of the organization as such, right? So that's where the employee is being introduced to the librarian, the entire library staff. Then in case there are certain formalities that are required to be observed with respect to filling up of forms, preparation of the library cards, okay, any policies that the faculty member is supposed to sign up, okay, and so things like that are taken care of so that the new member is able to access the library as and when required by him, right? So that's where the librarian will explain the policies, the procedures, the manner in which the library is being run, the timings, okay, the number of days for which the books, reference books, magazines or periodicals are being issued, and so on. Yes, in case this library is a digital library, so that's where access of the library is given to the newcomer. An entire tour of the library is being made by the staff members of the library to introduce the knowledge hub as such to the faculty member, indicating the areas where he would be able to locate the books that would be required by him. Now, this is the time that's where the new employee, not only he gets accustomed to the entire staff, but also he can have his own queries raised as well as answered with respect to the manner in which the library can be utilized by him, okay, in towards the performance of his academic duties as such, right? So that's with respect to interaction with the librarian. And then finally, interaction with the technical staff, right? So where the employee is introduced with the head of the technical department, okay, and the employees working under him. Many of the institutions hand over the laptops to the faculty members. In case they are not handed over and they are being owned by the newcomer itself, then yes, essentially they will be given the Wi-Fi access, okay, not only for the laptops, but also for the cell phones, okay, mail IDs are created and things like that. And then in case anything goes wrong, okay, with respect to the online activities that are being carried out, the meetings that are required to be attended, in case there are any problems or issues to be handled by the technical staff, then the manner in which the system works for technical help and the manner in which a ticket could be raised for organizing such a technical help, wherein it's specified what is needed to be taken care of within what duration, depending upon the urgency level of the things to be handled. Okay, everything is mentioned and the faculty is being trained to take care of the technical aspects of the academic duties that he is required to handle, right? So that's where we have looked into the onboarding of a new employee in educational institute, whereas the onboarding is divided into 6 different departments, right? Admin and HR, institute level interaction, department level interaction, introduction, course coordinator interaction, interaction with the librarian, and interaction with the technical staff as such. So now, so this is the standard operating procedure, you can say. Yes. And then we look into another small video with respect to 5 steps to world-class onboarding. So, yes. Yes, just a moment.
Are you someone who knows that you have this skill set and yet are struggling?
Yes, it's taking time.
Onboarding is kind of a weird word. Not a lot of companies have onboarding programs. How many of you actually have an onboarding program in your organization? So a few of you, right? Okay. Well, regardless of whether you think you do or not, every organization has an onboarding program, because every organization that has new employees coming in has those new employees that are having new experiences, they're learning new things, they're meeting new people. The question that you need to ask yourself is whether the experiences that they're having and the things that they're learning are helping to engage them with your organization or not. So that's really what onboarding is. Onboarding is a strategic system designed to decrease staff turnover by increasing staff engagement. And because it's such a weird topic, everybody always asks me, like, Emily, how did you get into onboarding? And the reason why I got into it is because my first job, when I was onboarded onto my first job, it was a bit of a train wreck. I started out, I went to the University of Pittsburgh, don't kill me. And when I graduated, I came back to my hometown, Charleston, and I started with a marketing agency. And it was a very small firm, and we had a problem. We had a problem because we had, at this time, it was year 2000, we had a fax machine. And it was a PR firm, and we had about 300 media phone numbers in that fax machine. It was regional, statewide. We were moving our office from one location to a new location down the street. The problem was, at the time, this is when fax machines were really big, if you unplugged the fax machine for more than 3 minutes, the database was wiped out. So this was kind of a pain, right? It was a big question. So when I looked out the window and saw the CEO of my company running down the street with the fax machine, I probably should have known at that time that this organization didn't have the resources to onboard me appropriately. And I was right. But I really got into onboarding when I worked at Dixon Hughes Goodman. We have Fred Dillon over here from Dixon Hughes. Fred, I promise I'm not going to tell any stories on you. I've already made him that promise. But I got really into onboarding when I saw firsthand the effect that retention could have on a business achieving its ability to achieve its strategic objectives. So I was working at Dixon Hughes, this is circa 2008, 2009, and I worked with the recruiting team really hard to find new hires. So we hired 23 new grads that year, and these are rock star hires. We spent a lot of time on campuses around the state trying to get those new hires, the best new hires, to come and work for us. How many do you think were still at the firm in 2011? 10, 5, 6. So out of 23 people that we hired, only 6 were there 3 years later. So this is, you know, how is a business supposed to achieve its objectives if you're constantly in that cycle of hire, lose, hire, right? And Dixon Hughes is, you know, a fantastic place to work. A lot of the people who left for very legitimate reasons. We actually had one girl who got recruited to be a model in New York City. So, I mean, I don't blame her. I would have gone too. So there's some legitimate reasons why people leave, but it still doesn't change the fact that when you spend a lot of time trying to get people to come on board, you want to keep them. It's really, really important, if you want to keep your new hires, that you keep the promises that you made to them in the recruiting cycle. And I want to tell you a story real quickly about my friend Robbie here, who there's a little bit about his resume up there. By all accounts and purposes, he is a fantastic recruit. And he was recruited by a lot of organizations. He ended up settling in Washington, D.C. at the headquarters of a nonprofit that if I said it right now, you would all know who I'm talking about. But I'm not going to say it because his onboarding experience sucked. And the reason why is because he showed up all excited because they had made him all sorts of promises about how great it was going to be to work there. And when he showed up, his boss was like, "I'm so glad that you're here. I'm going to LA for a conference. I'll be back next Wednesday." So he didn't know what he was supposed to be doing. She didn't introduce him to any of his colleagues who, when they saw him walking down the hall the next day, didn't know whether to introduce themselves to him or like throw him out of the building, right? So you have all of this excitement that he had walking into his first day, and she just blew it. The carrot of having a job isn't enough. Most employees, the good ones that you want to keep around, actually need to have some sort of purpose for the work that they're doing, right? And in order to give them that purpose, you have to be around. You have to be around to talk to them and train them. You have to be there on their first week on the job. When you get new hires that are any hire really, but new hires in particular that are coming into your organization, you want to know how to motivate them immediately. And he's got a great little formula here, and it's MAP. And MAP stands for mastery. They want to be technically good at what they're doing. They want to have autonomy, want to leave them alone enough so that they can actually feel like they're doing it on their own. And this purpose, right? They want to be connected to something larger. They want to feel like what they're doing matters. And I think that where companies go wrong is that you spend a lot of time developing your strategies, developing your strategic plans, and then none of that trickles down to the new hires. So they're thirsting for context, right? It's really hard to have somebody do a great job if they don't know why they're doing it in the first place. So that's one of the most important things that you can do to live up to the promise that you made in the recruiting cycle, is actually tell your employees the purpose of what they're doing. Connect their job to the bigger picture. That's how you get them engaged. It's like this balloon, right? So if you pump your recruits full of air, like, you are going to love it here. You're going to have so much autonomy to do what you want to do. Your coworkers are so great, right? So they come into the workforce and they're like, yeah, this place is awesome. Now, do you think it's one thing that kind of pops that balloon? Do you think like something happens and they're like, oh? No, it's not. It's the gradual. That's when you lose them. It's when they can't get a meeting with their boss. It's when you don't show up, and then you lose them. They become totally disengaged, right? And then you have the turnover that I talked about earlier. So don't take a sales approach to your recruiting process. The best thing to do when you're trying to get new hires to come on board is to talk about the kind of company that you want to be, but distinguish it from the company that you are. So you say, we're at our best when we work together. We're at our best when we bill and collect on time. We are at our best when we see the best in each other, right? Don't just tell them that you are this fantastic company when they walk in, because they're going to have some unfettered reality hitting them pretty soon. There is a period of time when every new employee, I don't care if they're lateral or entry level, when they come in, they are consuming resources. They're consuming your staff time that it takes to train them. They're consuming coffee in your coffee pot, real estate, all that. They're consuming. When do they get to the point where they break even and start contributing as much value to your organization as they're consuming from it? When do you think that is? 6 months. It's about 6.2 months, okay? So keep that in mind. When Statistically, when employees decide whether they want to leave or stay with an organization is somewhere within the first month to first 6 months. So if they're not breaking even till 6 months, and they're figuring out if they want to stay or not in 6 months, why do orientation programs last 1 week? Get dialogue from them. Getting dialogue from them also means that you have to give dialogue to them. And this is my grandfather and my grandmother on their wedding day in 1950, and one of my grandfather's favorite sayings was, "No news is good news." He was been through 2 wars, he was a pretty tough guy. And no news is good news, but that's just not true. For new employees, any new employees, doesn't just mean Gen Y, all of them need feedback. And in that same study of 584 employed Americans, 58% hadn't received any kind of useful feedback from their supervisors in 6 months. Sigh. So for onboarding programs, you need to sit down with your new employees within the first week and schedule at least quarterly sessions with them so that you have that scheduled feedback, and keep those appointments. Keep those appointments. A lot of managers don't. And the last thing is that you can get all of that right. You can have some amazing career plans, you can have a first-rate onboarding program, but what will great employees still demand? For people, what will great employees still demand? Managers. Great employees demand great managers. You can have all of your onboarding ducks in a row. You can have a fantastic program, but if they don't have good managers, they'll still leave. No amount of great onboarding will get them to stay, right? So it's the whole saying of people join companies and leave people. So true. So how do you fix that? The best way to do that is, in my opinion, to hold all of your managers accountable for how their employees answer questions in the Gallup Q12. So Gallup actually spent 7 years researching employee engagement and figured out that these are the 12 questions that would measure that. Hold your managers accountable for how the people underneath them answer this question. This is how you manage managers. So I mentioned that I was running down the street, my first boss, and I had an onboarding program that just wasn't, it was sink or swim. That was how I would define the onboarding program. But I stayed with that company for about 7 years. So the onboarding was terrible. They would admit it. But I stayed with the company anyway. Why do you think that is? I had a great manager. So just as if you have a fantastic onboarding program, but your management isn't there, the flip side is also true. You can have a weak onboarding program and still keep your employees if your managers are great. So my manager gave me a ton. He gave me so much. He taught me everything that I needed to know as a new grad. So I was able to give something back to him. He always wanted to be an author. And as a result of everything that I learned from him, I put it in a book. We put it in a book together, and I was able to publish this book with him. So he gave me as much as I gave him. And it was just, it's really beautiful how it worked out. And in that book, we have a chapter. Does anybody know who this is? Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly. In this book, we have a chapter called Embrace Your Inner Gene Kelly, where we talk about how Gene Kelly was really like obsessed with little things, like the crease of his pants, the top hat, the look into the camera, the beautiful cane, that sort of thing. And the little things added up to make him look like a great dancer. So one of the chapters in the book is how you can use little things at work, like handwritten notes and things like that, to build up a great reputation. And just yesterday, I got a note from Gene Kelly's widow saying, I want to thank you for keeping Gene Kelly's spirit alive. And it just, when I think about just how amazing it is that Skip was able to, that my mentor was able to spend time with me and teach me and be a mentor, and that I was able to give something back to him that has now grown to where Gene Kelly's widow wrote to us. It's just amazing. And I think I am not telling you guys anything that you don't know. But my final slide is my favorite tweet from Tom Peters, and it said, "You take care of the people take care of the service takes care of the profit, reinvest, and bingo." This is how you have a high-performing culture. Thank you.
Yes. So this was with respect to the importance of online boarding of new employees in order to keep the turnover. Turnover means employees moving out of the organization on account of for whatever reason, in order to keep the turnover to minimum. At the same time, make the employees feel that they not only they are welcome, but they are important uh, from the perspective of the organization with respect to the work or the work profile for which they have been hired, right? So that's where every organization has to have a separate system as such, okay, that has to be developed for the onboarding of new employees. Fine. Okay, class. So that's where we stop over here for today. See you all in the next week. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, class.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you.